Everyone, my name is Kathy Jones. I am a priestess of Avalon, a priestess of the sacred land of Avalon. I live in the small country town of Glastonbury, which is in the southwest of England. It is a very unique and special place. And once upon a time, it was a land, a small island surrounded by water. Nowadays, the island itself is surrounded by fields, by flat fields known as the Summerlands. This is an ancient and sacred place in our land, and it is the source of many legends, many myths. When I have been a seeker, a lover of Goddess for many, many years, and I was brought up, as many people were, as a Christian in this country, because in those days, in the 1970s and 1980s, Britain was seen as a Christian country, and we did not have goddesses in our land. But when my own journey of exploration of Goddess and who she is, when that began, and I began to think about who she might be in my own land, I felt that the way to find out about her was to look at the shapes of the land where I live, which was here in Glastonbury. At that time, the land was seen to be quite masculine. Here there are about 5 small hills that are grouped together with valleys in between and surrounded by the Summerlands. These hills, including the iconic Glastonbury Tor, were seen as being quite male and often said to represent God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Ghost. But when I began to look for Goddess here in my own land, I began looking at the shapes of the land, because if Goddess was anywhere, she had to be here in the shapes of the land. With my partner, who is now my husband, Mike, we looked at topographical maps of the land to see what we might see there. One of the first outlines that we saw, which is to do with the height of the land, was the shape of a great swan flying across the landscape from the northwest to the southeast, from the northeast to the southwest, sorry. I have here a carving that I did of this shape, of this image of the swan in the landscape with the shapes of the hills. As you can see, these are slightly exaggerated, but they give you an idea of the shape of the land. And in this landscape, we have, this is what is the Glastonbury Tor without the Christian tower on the top of it. This is Chalice Hill. These are the shapes of the land. This is Weariall Hill, which goes down towards the southwest. So this is the shape of the land and the landscape. And in seeing this swan in the landscape, this was an epiphany moment. It was a moment of realization that the land that was here was sacred and was sacred to Goddess. In the mythology of our land, there are many stories of the appearance of sacred creatures, of swans in particular. So there is a goddess who is known as Bridget or Bridie, and one of her sacred creatures here is the white swan who flies across the land. She appears in the form of a swan maiden, a maiden who transforms into a swan and transforms back from being a swan into a maiden. And these stories of swan maidens are well known across the whole of Europe. So to find her to find the shape of the swan in the landscape was important to me, because it signaled to me that an earlier goddess actually was part of this landscape. Now, in our country, the last time that goddess was really loved and adored in this land is a long time ago from the present. We can see in the wider landscape the remains of many ancient Neolithic goddess sites, circles of standing stones, ritual mounds, huge sacred landscapes that travel miles across the land, which indicate to us that the ancient peoples knew a lot about the way that the goddess in those times was honored through the cycle of her seasons. So when we begin to look for her again, the main way that we look to find goddess, because there are very few written records, almost none in this country, of the ancient goddess of these lands. So we have to find her again through making new relationships to the land itself, to the cycles of her seasons, to how we come to know her in the land. One of the main ways that we find out about her is to look at the shapes of the land. So to find the swan in the landscape, and the swan is the epiphany of Goddess Bridget, who here is honored particularly at the season of the year that is called Imbolc, which is around February the 1st. And this is recognized as the season of the maiden goddess. So the swan in the landscape was an epiphany moment to know that she was already here. Now the spirituality of goddess is not fixed, and in landscape it is not fixed. We can see her in many different ways. There's not just one way to see her. Although we may know that the land is sacred, we can look for her in different forms. Looking at the same landscape, we can also see her present in the form of a giant woman lying in the land. And she is perhaps 2 or 3 miles long. So in this same landscape, the same shape and form of the landscape, we see this figure here, which again is the figure of a giantess, a woman who lies in the land. She lies on her back. And also in this form, the taw is her left breast that rises to touch the sky. Like women everywhere, her right breast, when she lies on her back, is rolling round. So it's less defined, less obvious. Wirral Hill is her left leg extended, and her head is going back into the earth at a place called Stone Down. So within the same outlines, within the same topography of a land, we can see different forms of goddess. So in this form, she is both the lover goddess and the mother goddess. In this form, as the lover, who we honor in the season of Beltane, in this, her legs are spread wide. She is ready to welcome the sea, who is her lover, who is coming towards her from the western shore. Nowadays, the sea is about 80 miles away, but in the ancient times, the sea lapped upon the shoreline of the body of the goddess. Also, this shape in the land can be seen as the Great Mother, she who gives birth to everything, she who is the renewer of everything that there is in life, she who is the Great Mother, who is the abundant one. She's the one who loves us and cares for us and nurtures us and takes care of us, looks after us. She is the one who provides everything that we have. She is the one who teaches us about abundance, about giving, about gifting to each other through demonstrating through her own nature that she is the one who gives us everything. At another contour level, on the back of the swan that is that you can see kind of in this form, you can see there is another outline here, which is less distinct, perhaps. I'll show it to you in this form, which you can see here, which is here in this form, which is the shape of the old crone, she who sits and rides on the back of the swan. Now, when people come here, they quite often describe their experiences as those of meeting the dark goddess, the old woman, she who accompanies us down into the underworld. She is the one who takes us down into the depths of our own shadows, into the depths of our own emotions and feelings. She who asks us to meet and confront those parts of ourselves that we find difficult to know, difficult to understand, difficult to admit to. And it is this crone goddess who is also present in the landscape that we can see here in this figure of the crone with her crown upon her head. Once again, the features of this crone are part of the landscape here. So, as you can understand, here we have 4 faces of the goddess. Now, in many cultures, the goddess is described as having 3 faces: the maiden, the lover, the mother, and the crone. And here we work with 4 faces of the goddess: the maiden, the lover, the mother, and the crone, because you can't be a mother without being a lover. This is part of the solar cycle of the year, the solar wheel of the year. The maiden, mother, crone cycle is to do with the moon. But in our culture, the sun is also recognized as a sun goddess. She is known as Sul or Sulis or Grenya in the Irish tradition. There are many stories of the sun goddess. So we work with the wheel of the year, and we celebrate goddess in 8 seasons of the year that are related to the way in which her nature changes through the year. So we live in a country here in Britain which is in a northern latitude in the world, which cycles through 4 main seasons, which are winter, spring, summer, and autumn. But also between those seasons, there are places that are called cross quarters. The cross quarters lie halfway between the solstices and the equinoxes. So we work with the winter solstice and the spring equinox, say, but between them is Imbolc, which is a very early festival that recognized the changing of a season. And it is Imbolc that we honor the maiden goddess. At spring equinox, we honor the goddess of fire, because the spring fire is rising in the land and is rising in the east. At Beltane, which lies between the spring equinox and the summer solstice, we honor the lover goddess, the goddess of love, when nature all around us is becoming fertile and fecund. All the flowers are blossoming, everything is coming into bloom. Nature is alive and awake and full of sensuality and sexuality. In the summer, at the summer solstice, we honor the mother of water. And water we place in the south, because this is the season when we travel quite often to the oceans, the rivers, the seas. Here we honor Domnu, who is mother of the oceans here, mother of the deep sea. We honor the lady of the springs and holy wells. At Lammas, which lies between summer solstice and the autumn equinox, we honor the Great Mother, she who gives us everything, and she who is present here in this landscape. At the autumn equinox, we honor the Mother of Earth, the earth on which we live, the soil, the very substance of the land around us. And that becomes obvious as everything at the autumn equinox is beginning to return to the earth. It is the time of the harvest of nuts, particularly of apples, in the orchards of Avalon. And it's also the season of beginning to turn inwards towards the darker half of the year. Between the autumn equinox and the winter solstice, we celebrate the goddess of death, the dark goddess at Samhain. And this is the time when we allow ourselves to face our own death and the death of our loved ones, to journey to the places where our recently dead are living. It's a time of grieving, of sadness, and of letting go of the old and embracing the new. And all of this is also occurring in nature. At winter solstice, we honor the Mother of Air, of the breath, of stillness, of the time when everything has died back into the land, when there is no life and there is frost and ice upon the land. And this is the time of being deep within. This is our wheel of the year. And in the center of this wheel, we honor the goddess who is the goddess of this sacred place, who is the Lady of Avalon. Her familiar name is Nolava, of the sacred land. It is her body that lies in this land, that she is present here in the land itself. So there is a very powerful relationship here between the faces of the goddess, between the shapes of the land, and the changing seasons of her nature through the year. She has shown us in the time that I have been living here and working here, and seeking to bring her alive again in the world. She has made herself known to us through the times when we have honored her in the seasons of her nature. Behind me is a painting which shows Nolava in the landscape. Let's turn that up slightly. Yeah. There she is, the goddess who lies within the land. This is a painting by a man called Jonathan Minshall, who has painted many images of goddess for us in our land, in all the buildings that we now have. I first began in 1996 by creating the Glastonbury Goddess Conference, which is a huge international goddess conference that people come to from all over the world. It's now in its 26th year, this coming year. Out of the Goddess Conference came the need to train women and men to become priestesses and priests of Avalon, people who could work with the energies of Goddess, who could begin to understand who she is and what she is telling us and what she asks us to do for her. And I began to teach priestesses and some priests to begin to serve her once again. From that came the desire to create a goddess temple where we could gather together to honor her and to hold a space open so that people could come and see her and meet her and be in the energy. And the Goddess Temple opened in 2002 and has been open every day since. It's a very beautiful, strong, energetic place that has arisen directly out of the land here. Since that time, we also have the Goddess Hall, which we bought some time ago because we needed a bigger space in which to hold our ceremonies, because so many people wanted to come and join us that we needed a bigger space. So the Goddess Hall is a place for seasonal ceremonies, and also where we do many of our goddess teachings. Our priestess trainings take place in the Goddess Hall. About 4 years ago, we bought Goddess House, which is a goddess healing temple. And it's a place where you can hire rooms and that are beautifully decorated according to the seasons of her nature. And also where we offer healing therapies, because it seems that in these times, many people need healing from the wounds of patriarchy and the forgetting of the presence of Goddess in the world. So from our small town, tiny place, kind of in the middle of nowhere, which just happens to be known as the heart chakra of the world, the call of Goddess has gone out into the world, and many people have responded to her call. I hope that one day you will like to come and visit us here in Glastonbury, and you will be able to walk on her sacred hills. You'll be able to walk in the sacred places and feel the presence of Goddess here with you. Thank you, and blessed be.